I'm Autumn Taylor, 32, raising my beautiful daughter Lily on my own. Growing up, I believed family was sacred, something you could always count on. That changed at my sister's wedding. When Brittany offered me $15,000 to keep my daughter away, I refused. I never imagined she would grab my 10-year-old by the hair and drag her across that church. But what happened next shocked everyone in that room. Before I dive into this nightmare that was supposed to be a celebration of love, drop a comment letting me know if you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Brittany and I grew up in the same house, but might as well have lived in different worlds. 3 years older than me, she was always the golden child, class valedictorian, homecoming queen, and our parents' obvious favorite. While I played in mud puddles, Brittany kept her pristine dresses spotless. When I struggled with math homework, she'd already finished hers and was helping our neighbors' kids with theirs. Every parent-teacher conference was the same: praise for Brittany, followed by sighs about how I should try to be more like my sister. Our childhood bedroom told the story perfectly. A line down the middle separated her half, organized, decorated with academic awards and pageant crowns, from my chaotic side with its scattered art supplies and dog-eared books. Her perfectly arranged stuffed animals never crossed that invisible barrier, just like our lives rarely intersected despite sharing DNA. Autumn, my mother would say, if you applied yourself like Brittany, you wouldn't be getting CS. What she never understood was that I wasn't Brittany, and I didn't want to be. I loved art and literature, connecting with people rather than competing with them. I volunteered at animal shelters while Brittany interned at Fortune 500 companies. We were just different. The gap between us widened after high school. Brittany went to Princeton on a full scholarship, while I attended community college and worked part-time at a local cafe. When I got pregnant at 22 with my then-boyfriend James, the disappointment from my parents was palpable. James promised he'd stand by me, but disappeared 3 months after Lily was born, leaving me with a beautiful baby girl and not much else. Brittany, meanwhile, graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm in Boston. Her Instagram showed business trips to Paris and Tokyo, while I was figuring out how to afford diapers and daycare on a teaching assistant salary. I eventually finished my degree in early childhood education and secured a position as a kindergarten teacher. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed me to be with Lily when she wasn't in school, and we made our tiny 2-bedroom apartment into a cozy home. Despite my parents' clear preference for Brittany, I never resented my sister. We were just on different paths, and I was genuinely happy when she called 2 years ago to announce she'd met someone. His name is Derek, she gushed over the phone. He's the CFO of a tech company, comes from old money, and we're absolutely perfect together. I listened as she detailed his Harvard education, his summer house in the Hamptons, and the Porsche he drove. What she didn't mention was whether he made her laugh, if he was kind, or if he supported her dreams. But that was Brittany. Achievements and appearances always came first. 8 months later, she called again, this time squealing about the 3-carat diamond ring on her finger. The wedding, she informed me, would be the social event of the season, with over 300 guests and a budget that made my yearly salary look like pocket change. Of course, you'll be my maid of honor, she said, not really asking. And I suppose Lily could be the flower girl. How old is she now? 8. She's 10, I corrected, surprised Brittany had even considered including Lily. They'd met only a handful of times, usually during obligatory holiday gatherings where Brittany would give her expensive but impersonal gifts. In the months that followed, I got my first glimpse of Bridezilla Brittany. She texted me at all hours with demands and updates. The venue had to be the historic St. Catherine's Cathedral downtown, the flowers imported from Holland, the menu catered by a celebrity chef. Everything had to be Instagram perfect. The bridesmaids' dresses need to be cornflower blue, not navy, she snapped during one of our rare in-person meetings. And make sure you lose 10 pounds before the fitting. The designer doesn't accommodate above a size 6. I bit my tongue, reminding myself this was her special day. But when she started dictating what color I should dye my hair, that red is so unprofessional, I drew the line. Brittany, I'm happy to support you, but I'm not changing my appearance. She rolled her eyes and muttered something about me always being difficult, but dropped the subject. The real surprise came when the formal invitation arrived in our mailbox. Embossed on thick cream paper with gold lettering, it listed both my name and Miss Lily Taylor as part of the wedding party. Lily was ecstatic, twirling around our living room. "I get to wear a pretty dress and throw flowers, Mom," she exclaimed, her green eyes, so like mine, sparkling with excitement. Looking at my daughter's joy, I pushed aside my reservations. Maybe this wedding would be a chance for Brittany to finally develop a relationship with her only niece. Maybe, just maybe, we could become a real family. I couldn't have been more wrong. The bridal shop where Brittany scheduled our fittings was in the expensive part of downtown, with crystal chandeliers and champagne served on silver trays. Lily's eyes widened as we entered, taking in the sea of white tulle and silk. Her flower girl dress had been specially designed to match the wedding theme, and she couldn't wait to try it on. "Don't touch anything," Brittany hissed as soon as we arrived, eyeing Lily's small hands with suspicion. "These dresses cost more than your mother's car." I felt my daughter shrink beside me, her earlier excitement dimming. "She knows to be careful," I said quietly, giving Lily's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. The boutique owner, Madeline, brought out the dresses with a flourish. Brittany's gown was a marvel of lace and crystal beadwork, with a train that stretched 6 feet behind her. The bridesmaid dresses were simple by comparison, though the price tag made me wince. But it was Lily's dress that captured everyone's attention, a miniature fairy tale creation of ivory silk with delicate blue flowers embroidered around the hem. Lily stepped out of the changing room, a vision of innocence and joy. She twirled carefully, the skirt billowing around her ankles. "What do you think, Aunt Brittany?" she asked shyly. My sister barely glanced up from her phone. "Your hair is all wrong for this. And shouldn't she have lost her baby teeth by now? That gap in the front is going to ruin the pictures." The smile slid from Lily's face like melting ice cream. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "She's 10 years old, Brittany. She's beautiful exactly as she is. Whatever. We'll have the photographer edit the pictures." She turned to Madeline. "Can we do something about her hair? Maybe extensions to cover those uneven layers." That was it. "Lily, honey, why don't you change back into your clothes? I need to talk to Aunt Brittany." Once Lily was out of earshot, I confronted my sister. "You need to stop. She's a child, not an accessory. This is my wedding, Autumn. Everything needs to be perfect. If perfect means making your niece feel inadequate, then maybe we shouldn't be part of this." Brittany's eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic. I'm paying for these dresses, aren't I? The least you could do is make sure she looks presentable." Before I could respond, Lily returned, carefully carrying her dress. Despite Brittany's criticism, she still managed to smile. "It's okay, Mom. I can wear my hair however Aunt Brittany wants." The selflessness of my daughter made the contrast between her and my sister even starker. Brittany had everything: money, success, beauty, yet seemed perpetually dissatisfied. Lily, with her second-hand clothes and gap-toothed smile, radiated a happiness that came from within. "No, sweetie," I said firmly. "You'll wear your hair however you like it." The tension between Brittany and me continued to build as the wedding drew closer. Every interaction became a power struggle, from the rehearsal dinner seating chart to the shoe height I was allowed to wear. But I kept reminding myself this was temporary. After the wedding, our lives would return to normal, and Brittany would go back to her world of corporate success and luxury vacations. The rehearsal dinner was held at an exclusive country club, where waiters in tuxedos served tiny portions of food with French names I couldn't pronounce. Lily and I were seated at a table far from the main party, with distant relatives neither of us had met before. Derek's family occupied the places of honor, his parents, Eleanor and Richard Hamilton, surveying the room with the quiet confidence of old money. During a break in the proceedings, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I approached the hallway leading to the ladies' room, I heard Brittany's voice coming from a small alcove. "I know, Eleanor. I'm handling it," my sister was saying, her tone deferential in a way I'd never heard before. "The resemblance between them is, Unfortunate, replied an older woman's voice, Derek's mother. And the child's table manners leave much to be desired. Are you certain they need to be in the ceremony? The optics, Brittany. I'm working on a solution, Brittany assured her. The situation will be fixed before tomorrow. I froze, unsure if I'd heard correctly. Were they talking about Lily and me? Before I could process this, someone exited the bathroom, forcing me to move or be discovered eavesdropping. I hurried back to our table, where Lily was carefully eating her dessert, trying not to get chocolate on her dress. Looking at her, this kind, resilient child who had faced rejection from her father and now subtle disdain from her aunt, I felt a fierce protectiveness rise within me. Whatever solution Brittany was planning, I wouldn't let it hurt my daughter. The night ended with forced smiles and polite goodbyes. As we drove home in my aging Honda, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the late hour and the strain of being on her best behavior. We just need to get through tomorrow, I whispered to myself. One day, and then we're done. I just put Lily to bed when my doorbell rang. It was nearly 11, and we weren't expecting anyone. Peering through the peephole, I was surprised to see Brittany standing in the hallway of my apartment building, looking distinctly out of place in her designer clothes. We need to talk, she said as I opened the door, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. In her hand was a white envelope. Brittany surveyed my living room with barely concealed disdain, eyeing the second-hand furniture and Lily's art projects decorating the walls. She perched on the edge of my sofa as if afraid it might contaminate her custom-tailored pantsuit. Can I get you something to drink? I offered, trying to be hospitable despite the late hour and her unannounced visit. No, she replied curtly. This won't take long. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as she placed the white envelope on my coffee table, manicured fingernail tapping against it deliberately. What's that? I asked, though something told me I didn't want to know. $15,000, Brittany stated, her voice businesslike. Cash. I stared at her, waiting for an explanation that would make sense of the envelope sitting between us like a ticking bomb. It's for you, she continued when I didn't respond. To compensate for your inconvenience. What inconvenience? Brittany sighed, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. I need Lily to not be in the wedding tomorrow. The words hung in the air, so absurd I almost laughed. What are you talking about? She's been practicing for weeks. Her dress is ready. She's so excited. The aesthetics aren't working, my sister replied, her tone suggesting she was discussing a furniture arrangement rather than my daughter's feelings. Eleanor, that's Derek's mother, pointed out that having a flower girl who doesn't complement the overall visual concept of the wedding creates an unfortunate distraction. Heat rushed to my face as I processed what she was saying. Are you telling me that your future mother-in-law thinks my daughter isn't pretty enough to be in your wedding? Don't be so sensitive, Autumn. This is about creating a cohesive look. The Hamilton family has certain expectations. This wedding will be photographed for society magazines. Everything needs to be perfect. Perfect, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. And Lily isn't perfect enough. Brittany had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but pressed on. The gap in her front teeth, her hair that never stays in place, the way she fidgets, these details matter in professional photography. I stood up, hands shaking with anger. Get out. Don't be dramatic. I'm offering you $15,000. That's more than you make in 3 months. Think what you could do for Lily with that money. College fund, braces to fix those teeth, maybe even a down payment on a better apartment in a neighborhood with decent schools. The worst part was, for a split second, I did think about it. $15,000 would indeed change our lives. It would ease the constant financial stress, give Lily opportunities one struggled to provide. The rational part of my brain calculated all we could do with that money. But then I pictured telling my daughter she couldn't be a flower girl after all. Explaining that her aunt had decided she wasn't good enough, pretty enough, perfect enough to stand in that church. I imagined the light in her eyes dimming, another rejection to add to her father's abandonment. No, I said firmly. Not for 15,000, not for 15 million. My daughter is not for sale. Brittany's face hardened. This isn't about selling anything. It's a practical arrangement that benefits everyone. Lily won't have to stand still for hours or worry about making mistakes. You get financial security. The wedding proceeds without complications. The only complication here is your shallow values. Lily is your niece, your blood. How can you not see how cruel this is? Cruel would be subjecting her to scrutiny she's not prepared for, Brittany countered. The Hamiltons move in elite circles. Their friends will notice every flaw, every misstep. I'm protecting her. I laughed bitterly. Don't pretend this is about protecting Lily. This is about protecting your image and impressing your in-laws. You've always been jealous of my success, Brittany snapped, her composed facade cracking. I worked hard for everything I have. I made sacrifices while you were getting pregnant by some loser who couldn't even stick around. The mention of Lily's father felt like a slap. Don't you dare bring James into this. And don't pretend you know anything about my life or what I've sacrificed. Raising a child alone while working full-time and finishing my degree wasn't exactly a vacation. No one forced you to keep the baby, she muttered. The room went deadly quiet. What did you just say? Brittany had the grace to look slightly ashamed but didn't back down. I'm just saying you had options. You chose this life. Yes, I chose my daughter. Every single day I choose her. And I will never, ever regret that choice. I picked up the envelope and thrust it back at her. Take your money and get out of my apartment. You're making a mistake, she warned, standing to face me. This is a one-time offer. The only mistake would be teaching my daughter that her worth is measured by how well she photographs at your wedding. Now leave before I say something I'll regret. Brittany snatched the envelope, her jaw tight with anger. Fine. Be there tomorrow at 9 sharp. And make sure Lily knows the routine. If she ruins this for me. She's 10 years old, and she's doing you a favor by participating in your superficial spectacle. If anyone ruins tomorrow, it won't be her. My sister stalked toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. You could have given her a better life with this money. Remember that when you're still struggling to make ends meet next month. After she left, I collapsed onto the sofa, trembling with rage and hurt. The apartment felt contaminated by her presence, by the ugly truth she had revealed about how she saw my daughter, how she saw me. From the hallway came a small voice, Mom. My heart sank as I turned to find Lily standing in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. Honey, you should be in bed. I heard yelling. She padded into the living room, curling up beside me. Is Aunt Brittany mad at me? I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. No, sweetheart. Aunt Brittany is just very stressed about her wedding. Grown-up stuff. She doesn't want me to be the flower girl anymore, does she? Lily asked, her perception sharper than I'd given her credit for. I considered lying to protect her feelings, but decided she deserved the truth, or at least a version of it. She's worried about a lot of details, but you're still the flower girl. And you're going to be amazing. I heard her say something about money. My stomach clenched. How much had she overheard? That was nothing for you to worry about. Lily looked up at me, her green eyes serious. If Aunt Brittany doesn't want me there, I don't have to go. I know money is tight sometimes. The maturity in her young face broke my heart. At 10 years old, she was already willing to put aside her feelings for practical considerations. I hugged her fiercely. Listen to me, Lily Taylor. You are going to be the most beautiful, wonderful flower girl that church has ever seen. And no amount of money in the world is worth making you feel like you don't belong somewhere. She smiled, the gap in her front teeth visible, the imperfection Brittany had so callously pointed out. To me, it was just one more thing that made Lily perfectly herself. Now back to bed, I said, ruffling her hair. We have a big day tomorrow. As I tucked her in again, my mind raced with second thoughts. Was I making the right decision? $15,000 really would change our lives. But as I gazed at my daughter's peaceful face, I knew that some things were worth more than money. Her dignity, her self-worth, the knowledge that she was enough, exactly as she was. Tomorrow would be difficult, but we would face it together. I just hoped Brittany had gotten whatever ugliness she harbored out of her system and would treat Lily with basic kindness at the wedding. How wrong I was. St. Catherine's Cathedral stood like a stone sentinel against the bright blue September sky, its stained glass windows catching the morning sunlight. Lily and I arrived precisely at 9, as instructed, her flower girl dress protected by a garment bag, my bridesmaid dress likewise shielded from the elements. "It looks like a castle," Lily whispered as we climbed the stone steps, her eyes wide with wonder. Inside, the cathedral was a hive of activity. Florists arranged elaborate displays of white roses and hydrangeas, their sweet scent filling the air. A photographer and his assistants tested lighting angles while wedding planners with clipboards hurried about, issuing orders into headsets. "The bridal party is gathering in the East Wing," a coordinator informed us, barely glancing up from her tablet. "The bride is in the private chamber and is not to be disturbed." Lily squeezed my hand nervously as we navigated the labyrinthine hallways to find the other bridesmaids. The room assigned to us was luxurious, with antique mirrors and plush seating areas. The 5 other women, all friends from Brittany's corporate world or college, were already in various stages of preparation, mimosas in hand despite the early hour. "Autumn, finally," said Madison, Brittany's maid of honor and college roommate. "And this must be the flower girl." Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she looked at Lily. I felt Lily press against my side, suddenly shy amid these polished, perfect women. "Yes, this is Lily. Where should we set up?" Madison gestured vaguely to a corner. "Over there's fine. The hair and makeup team will be with you, eventually. Priority order, you understand." Translation: we were last on the list. I guided Lily to our designated area, helping her unpack her things. "Are these Aunt Brittany's friends?" she asked quietly. "Yes, from college and work. They don't smile with their eyes. Out of the mouths of babes." I suppressed a laugh. "Let's focus on getting ready. Want me to do your hair while we wait?" As I gently brushed and styled Lily's auburn hair, so like mine, into a crown of loose curls, I watched the other women through the mirror. They moved in a world I had never been part of, discussing vacation homes and investment portfolios between sips of champagne. Occasionally, one would glance our way with barely concealed curiosity or pity. An hour passed before the hairstylist finally made her way to us, spending minimal time on my simple updo before turning to Lily. To her credit, she treated my daughter with genuine warmth, calling her princess and taking care with her delicate curls. Lily beamed under the attention. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I told her truthfully when the stylist finished. And she did, her green eyes bright with excitement, freckles peeking through light makeup, hair arranged in soft tendrils with tiny blue flowers woven throughout. The door opened, and the wedding planner appeared, looking harried. "Flower girl needed for a final rehearsal." "Now." Lily straightened her shoulders, suddenly all business. "That's me," she said, confidence replacing her earlier shyness. "I've been practicing every day." "I'll come with you," I offered, reaching for her hand. "Just the flower girl," the planner insisted. "Bridesmaids need to finish getting ready and line up in 20 minutes. Before I could protest, Lily gave me a reassuring smile. "It's okay, Mom. I know what to do." I watched her follow the planner out, my heart swelling with pride at her independence, yet aching with a vague unease I couldn't explain. Something felt off about this day, beyond the normal tension of a high-society wedding. The makeup artist approached, effectively ending my moment of reflection. By the time she finished, the other bridesmaids were already lining up in the hallway, their cornflower blue dresses identical except for slight variations in style to accommodate different body types, Brittany's one concession to practicality. "Has anyone seen the bride?" Madison asked, checking her watch nervously. "She should be here by now." As if summoned by the question, the wedding planner reappeared, her professional composure noticeably strained. "Slight change of plans. The bride has requested all bridesmaids proceed to the church entrance immediately. The ceremony will begin in 10 minutes. But what about the traditional photos beforehand?" Madison protested. "Cancelled. Please proceed now." Something was definitely wrong. As we filed out, I pulled the planner aside. "Where's my daughter? Where's Lily?" "With the bride," she replied tersely, avoiding my eyes. "Please take your place in line." Alarm bells rang in my head, but the processional music had already begun. The massive cathedral doors swung open, revealing rows of elegantly dressed guests, 300 of Brittany and Derek's closest friends and family, none of whom I knew beyond a handful of relatives. One by one, the bridesmaids began their measured walk down the aisle. At the altar stood Derek, handsome in his tuxedo if a bit pale, flanked by his groomsmen. His parents occupied the front row, Eleanor Hamilton's critical gaze sweeping over each bridesmaid as we passed. When my turn came, I forced a smile and clutched my bouquet, scanning the church for any sign of Lily. She should have gone before us, scattering rose petals. Where was she? I took my place beside the other bridesmaids, heart pounding. The music shifted to the traditional bridal march, and the congregation rose, all eyes turning to the entrance. That's when I heard it, a child's cry of pain, quickly muffled but unmistakable. My blood turned to ice. Instead of Brittany appearing in the doorway as expected, a commotion broke out in a side chapel. The heavy wooden door burst open, and my sister emerged, resplendent in her designer gown, veil floating behind her like a cloud. But it wasn't her dramatic entrance that caused the collective gasp from the guests. It was the sight of my daughter, my beautiful Lily, being dragged by her carefully styled hair, Brittany's white-knuckled grip tangled in those auburn curls I had so lovingly arranged. "You stupid, clumsy brat." Brittany was hissing, oblivious to the hundreds of witnesses. "I told you to wait until the music changed. You've ruined everything." Lily's face was contorted in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks as she stumbled alongside her aunt, rose petals scattered haphazardly from her dropped basket. Time seemed to slow as my brain processed the unthinkable scene before me. Then, like a switch flipping, protective rage surged through my body. I dropped my bouquet and ran, my bridesmaid dress billowing behind me as I sprinted down the aisle toward my daughter. "Let go of her," I screamed, all decorum forgotten. "Take your hands off my child." Brittany's head snapped up, her eyes widening as she registered the silent, shocked audience. But instead of releasing Lily, she tightened her grip. She was going to ruin the ceremony. She spat, mascara beginning to run as her composure cracked. "Just like you've always tried to ruin everything good in my life with your mess of an existence." I reached them in seconds, yanking Brittany's hand away from Lily's hair with enough force to tear out several strands. I pushed my daughter behind me, shielding her with my body. "Have you lost your mind?" I demanded, fury making my voice shake. "She's a child. This is my wedding." Brittany shrieked, her carefully constructed image of perfection shattering before hundreds of horrified witnesses. "Everything was supposed to be perfect. But you had to insist on bringing her. You couldn't just take the money and stay away." A collective murmur rippled through the church at the mention of money. Derek took a hesitant step forward from the altar, confusion evident on his face. "Brittany," he called, "what's going on?" "What money?" But my sister was beyond reason, her rage finding its target in me, the perpetual disappointment, the sister who had never fit into her perfect world. "You've always been jealous," she hissed, lunging at me with hands outstretched like claws. Little Autumn with her art projects and her bastard child, always playing the victim. I caught her wrists before she could reach my face, struggling to restrain her without causing a further scene. Behind me, Lily sobbed quietly, the sound breaking my heart. "That's enough." A commanding voice cut through the chaos. Eleanor Hamilton had risen from her seat, her aristocratic features set in a mask of cold fury. But to my shock, her ire wasn't directed at me or Lily. "I have seen quite enough, Brittany," she announced, her voice carrying throughout the cathedral. "This charade ends now." Eleanor Hamilton walked down the aisle with regal poise, her expensive heels clicking against the marble floor. The entire congregation seemed to hold its breath, hundreds of eyes following her progress toward where Brittany and I stood frozen in our confrontation. "Mother Hamilton," Brittany began, her voice suddenly honeyed despite her disheveled appearance. "I can explain. My sister has always been difficult, and her daughter." Silence. Eleanor didn't raise her voice, but the single word cut through Brittany's excuses like a knife. She turned to address the stunned wedding guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this spectacle. However, it seems fortuitous that certain truths have emerged before vows were exchanged rather than after. Derek hurried down from the altar, confusion etched on his face. Mother, what are you talking about? Eleanor's expression softened slightly as she looked at her son. I'm sorry, Derek. I should have shared my concerns sooner, but I wanted to be absolutely certain. She turned to face Brittany, who had gone deathly pale. Perhaps you'd like to explain about the Westlake Foundation funds? Or shall I? Brittany's face strained of what little color remained. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered, but her eyes darted nervously toward the exit. I gently guided Lily behind a stone pillar, shielding her from the unfolding drama while keeping her close. It's okay, sweetie, I murmured, wiping tears from her cheeks with my thumb. I've got you now. Eleanor continued, her voice clear and measured. 3 months ago, the charitable foundation overseen by my family noticed discrepancies in our accounts. Nearly $200,000 had been diverted through a complex series of transactions. She fixed Brittany with a steely gaze. Transactions authorized by you as our marketing director. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the church. Derek stared at his fiancée in disbelief. Is this true? Of course not. Brittany protested, though her voice lacked conviction. Eleanor is confused. The money went to the Children's Hospital campaign, all perfectly documented. Interesting you should mention documentation. Eleanor opened the small clutch she carried, withdrawing several folded papers. Our forensic accountants are quite thorough. These records show the money was actually routed to personal accounts in the Cayman Islands. Accounts opened in your name 6 months ago. Derek looked as though he might be sick. The Cayman Islands? Brittany, please tell me this isn't true. It's not just the foundation money, Eleanor continued relentlessly. We've discovered she's been embezzling from her own company for years. The designer clothes, the luxury vacations, that apartment in Beacon Hill, all funded with stolen money. I remembered all the times Brittany had flaunted her success, making me feel inadequate for my modest teacher's salary and small apartment. The contrast between her luxurious lifestyle and her actual income had never quite added up, but I'd attributed it to smart investments or family support. Brittany's face contorted with rage and desperation. You've been investigating me? How dare you? Derek, are you going to let your mother speak to me this way? But Derek had backed away from her, horror dawning on his face. The children's charity gala last year, you said you raised $500,000. I did. Brittany insisted. No, Eleanor countered coldly. The event raised just under $200,000. The rest was fabricated, a fiction to enhance your reputation in our social circle and secure your position at the foundation. As this bombshell landed, I felt a tug on my dress. Lily looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. Mom, can we go home now? She whispered. Before I could answer, Brittany's attention snapped back to us, her expression darkening. This is your fault, she snarled, taking a menacing step in our direction. If you had just stayed away like I paid you to, none of this would have happened. Derek's head jerked up. Paid? What is she talking about, Autumn? I hesitated, reluctant to add fuel to the fire, but Brittany was already spiraling beyond control. $15,000, she shouted. That's what I offered her to keep that little brat away from my perfect day. Any reasonable person would have taken it. The cruel words echoed through the cathedral, landing like physical blows. Lily flinched against me, and I wrapped my arms tighter around her. You offered to pay your sister to exclude her 10-year-old daughter from the wedding. Eleanor's voice dripped with disgust. Your own niece. You don't understand, Brittany pleaded, switching tactics. The aesthetics were so important, the photographs for the society pages, and the child is so ordinary. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, whatever remaining sympathy anyone might have had for Brittany evaporated. Derek slowly removed the ring from his finger, the one that matched Brittany's engagement diamond. There will be no wedding today, he announced, his voice hollow. I'm sorry, everyone. You can't do this to me. Brittany shrieked, lunging at him. Do you know how much money I've spent? How many strings I've pulled to make this day happen? With stolen money, Eleanor reminded her coldly. Money that was meant for children with cancer. As if on cue, 2 men in dark suits appeared at the church entrance. Ms. Brittany Taylor, one called. We're with the Financial Crimes Division. We need you to come with us for questioning. Brittany's eyes darted wildly around the church, looking for an escape route or perhaps a sympathetic face. Finding neither, she rounded on me one last time. This is all because of you, she hissed. You and your illegitimate mistake of a daughter. I should have been an only child. Something in me snapped at those words. All the years of accepting her barbs, making excuses for her behavior, telling myself that family was family despite everything, it ended in that moment. No, Brittany, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. This is because of you. Your choices. Your lies. Your cruelty. I gestured around at the disintegrating wedding. You built your entire life on appearances and deception, and now it's collapsing because that's what happens to houses built on sand. Brittany's face crumpled, mascara streaming down her cheeks in black rivulets. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the lost, insecure person beneath the perfect exterior, the sister who had perhaps needed validation so desperately she'd built her entire identity around achievements and appearances. But then her walls slammed back into place. I have nothing to say to any of you, she declared, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin. My lawyer will handle this misunderstanding. As the officers escorted her down the aisle, the wedding guests began to disperse, murmuring in shocked clusters. The dream wedding had become a nightmare, a society spectacle of an entirely different sort than planned. Derek approached us hesitantly, his face etched with embarrassment and concern. Autumn, I am so incredibly sorry. I had no idea about any of this, the money, the offer, how she treated Lily. He knelt down to my daughter's level. Especially how she treated you, Lily. No one should ever be hurt like that. Lily, resilient as always, gave him a small nod. It's not your fault, Mr. Derek. Eleanor joined us, her earlier severity softened by genuine remorse. That child has more grace than most adults I know, she observed. Including myself, I'm afraid. I should have spoken up sooner about my suspicions. Why didn't you? I couldn't help asking. She sighed, age momentarily showing through her carefully maintained appearance. Hope, I suppose. That I was wrong. That the woman my son loved wasn't capable of such deception. She shook her head ruefully. A mother's blind spot. As the church emptied around us, I felt a profound weariness settle into my bones. The adrenaline of confrontation faded, leaving behind the weight of family ties severed and truths too painful to process immediately. We should go, I said quietly, gathering Lily's things. This has been traumatic enough for everyone. Wait. Eleanor reached out, her hand lightly touching my arm. I owe you both a proper apology and perhaps more than that. Would you be willing to join us for lunch? Somewhere quiet, away from all this. I hesitated, torn between the desire to retreat to the safety of our apartment and the sense that this conversation wasn't finished. Lily looked up at me. Can we change clothes first? This dress reminds me of Aunt Brittany being mean. Her simple request decided it. Yes to both, I told her, then turned to Eleanor and Derek. We'll meet you, but first we need to change and take a moment. As we walked out of the cathedral into the bright September sunshine, Lily's small hand firmly in mine, I realized that something fundamental had shifted today. Family wasn't just about blood relations, it was about how people treated each other, the respect they showed, the love they demonstrated through actions rather than words. And sometimes, when that fundamental contract was broken beyond repair, the only way forward was to leave the broken pieces behind. The story of the wedding that wasn't spread through the city like wildfire. By Monday morning, local news stations were running segments about the society wedding scandal, complete with shaky cell phone footage of Brittany being escorted from the church. The financial crimes investigation quickly expanded as more evidence of embezzlement surfaced, not just from the Hamilton Foundation, but from Brittany's marketing firm as well. I took Lily out of school for a few days, shielding her from the inevitable gossip. We spent quiet hours at home, processing the weekend's events through art projects and honest conversations about family, boundaries, and standing up for yourself. Is Aunt Brittany going to jail? Lily asked as we painted watercolor landscapes at our kitchen table. I don't know, sweetie, I answered truthfully. She did some things that were against the law, and there are consequences for that. Is she still our family? The question pierced my heart with its innocent complexity. Brittany will always be my sister and your aunt by blood, I said carefully. But sometimes, being family isn't enough reason to keep someone in your life if they hurt you. Lily considered this, brush suspended over her paper. Like my dad. Similar, yes. I had always been honest with Lily about James leaving, while age-appropriately explaining that his absence reflected his own issues, not her worth. Do you think Aunt Brittany and Dad are sad inside? Is that why they're mean sometimes? Such wisdom from my 10-year-old. I think everyone has sadness and struggles, sweetheart. But most people don't let that pain turn into cruelty toward others, especially children. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother for the 5th time that day. After ignoring her calls all weekend, I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. When I finally called back that evening after Lily was asleep, my parents were predictably defensive of Brittany. She's under so much pressure, my mother insisted. The wedding was causing her tremendous stress. I'm sure she didn't mean to hurt Lily. She dragged my daughter across a church by her hair, I replied flatly. In front of 300 people. After offering me money to keep Lily away because she wasn't perfect enough for the photos. Well, you could have handled it privately instead of causing a scene, my father chimed in. Now the whole family is embarrassed. The familiar pattern of excusing Brittany while blaming me ignited a new determination in my chest. I'm going to say this once, I told them, my voice steady. What Brittany did was inexcusable. She physically assaulted your granddaughter. She's also been stealing money from her company and a children's charity. If you can't acknowledge those facts and prioritize Lily's well-being, then we need to take a break from our relationship. The stunned silence on the other end was eventually broken by my mother's tearful accusations of disloyalty, but I held firm. By the end of the call, boundaries had been established that should have been in place years ago. 3 days after the wedding disaster, I received an unexpected call from an unfamiliar number. Autumn Taylor? This is Eleanor Hamilton. I was hoping we might meet for coffee this afternoon. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Curious despite my reservations, I arranged to meet her at a quiet cafe while Lily was at her friend's house for a play date. Eleanor was already seated when I arrived, looking less intimidating in casual slacks and a sweater than she had in her wedding finery. She rose to greet me with a handshake that was surprisingly warm. Thank you for coming, she said as we settled at a corner table. How is Lily doing? She's resilient, I replied. Children often are. But she has questions I'm not always sure how to answer. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. The foundation I oversee, the one your sister was stealing from, primarily funds children's mental health services. If Lily would benefit from speaking with someone, I'd be happy to arrange it. Completely confidentially, of course. The offer caught me off guard. That's very kind, I said cautiously. I'll consider it. That's not why I asked you here, though. Eleanor stirred her tea deliberately. I've been doing some thinking since Saturday. About character. About values. About the kind of people the Hamilton Foundation wants to be associated with. I shifted uncomfortably, unsure where this was heading. Our education director is leaving at the end of the month, she continued. Family relocation. The position oversees our scholarship programs, after-school initiatives, and educational grants. Based on your background in early childhood education and, frankly, the integrity you demonstrated at the wedding, I believe you might be an excellent fit. I nearly choked on my coffee. I'm sorry. It's a full-time position with a considerable salary increase from your current teaching job. Flexible hours to accommodate Lily's schedule. Full benefits, including a college fund contribution program for employees' children. She slid a business card across the table. If you're interested, I'd like you to come in for a formal interview next week. My mind raced. The position sounded perfect, challenging work in a field I was passionate about, better pay, benefits that would transform our financial situation. But doubt crept in. Is this because you feel sorry for us? Or guilty about what happened? Eleanor's expression turned serious. I don't make business decisions based on pity or guilt, Miss Taylor. The foundation needs someone with both professional qualifications and personal integrity. Someone who understands the value of education because they've seen firsthand how it changes lives. She paused. Someone who won't be swayed by $15,000 to compromise their principles. Put that way, it made more sense. Still, I couldn't help wondering if this opportunity came with strings attached. What about Brittany? Wouldn't it be awkward, given the circumstances? Brittany no longer has any association with the Hamilton family or our foundation, Eleanor stated firmly. Derek has ended their relationship completely. As for the legal matters, that's in the hands of the authorities now. I turned the business card over in my fingers, possibility unfurling in my mind. I'd like to think about it. Of course. The interview would simply be a first step. She hesitated, then added more softly, for what it's worth, I admire how you've raised Lily. She's a credit to you. 2 weeks later, I walked into the Hamilton Foundation offices for my first day as their new education director. The interview process had been rigorous and fair, convincing me that the offer was genuinely based on my qualifications rather than charity or guilt. My new salary was exactly double what I'd made as a kindergarten teacher. With the first paycheck, I paid off the last of my student loans. With the second, I started a proper college fund for Lily. By the third month, we were able to move to a larger apartment in a neighborhood with one of the city's best public schools. Lily blossomed in her new environment, making friends quickly and excelling academically. The incident at the wedding gradually faded from her immediate concerns, though occasionally she would ask about her aunt. The news provided updates I carefully filtered before sharing with my daughter. Brittany had accepted a plea deal, avoiding prison time but receiving 5 years of probation, substantial fines, and community service. Her career was in ruins, her reputation shattered. According to my parents, who maintained contact with her despite my boundaries, she blamed everyone but herself for her downfall. 6 months after starting my new position, I received a message from Derek Hamilton, who had maintained a respectful distance since the wedding disaster. I'm in town for a few days, he wrote. I was wondering if I might treat you and Lily to dinner? Eleanor mentions you're doing remarkable work at the foundation. I hesitated, uncertain about the propriety of such a meeting, but Lily was enthusiastic when I mentioned it. Mr. Derek was nice to me when Aunt Brittany was mean, she reminded me. And he didn't know about the bad things she was doing. Her simple wisdom once again guided my decision. We met Derek at a family-friendly restaurant where Lily could enjoy the indoor playground after eating. The dinner was surprisingly comfortable, with Derek asking thoughtful questions about Lily's school and my work at the foundation. I've been thinking about getting more involved with the foundation's programs, he mentioned as we watched Lily navigate the playground equipment. Mother speaks highly of the new directions you're taking the education initiatives. We're focusing on experiential learning opportunities for underserved communities, I explained, warming to my favorite topic. Research shows that hands-on projects in science and arts significantly improve long-term educational outcomes. Derek listened attentively, asking insightful questions that revealed a genuine interest rather than polite conversation. As the evening drew to a close, he hesitated before speaking again. I want to apologize again for what happened with Brittany. I should have seen the warning signs. We all miss them, I assured him. Brittany was skilled at presenting the image she wanted people to see. Still, what happened to Lily was unforgivable. His expression grew serious. I want you to know that I've completely severed ties with Brittany. The last I heard, she was trying to rebuild her life in another state. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness for my sister, alone and starting over without the facade of success she'd constructed. But a larger part remembered Lily's tears, the years of subtle cruelty, and the shocking betrayal of family bonds. Some relationships can't be repaired, I said quietly. And that's okay. Derek nodded, understanding in his eyes. Some shouldn't be. As weeks turned into months, our lives settled into a new normal. The work at the foundation was challenging but deeply fulfilling, allowing me to help create educational opportunities for children who reminded me of Lily, bright, curious, deserving of every chance to thrive. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. After several failed attempts at family therapy, we established a cautious détente, They could be part of Lily's life as long as they respected my boundaries regarding Brittany and refrained from criticizing my parenting or life choices. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Derek became an unexpected friend, his kindness toward Lily and respect for me gradually building a foundation of trust. When he eventually asked if I would consider having dinner with him, just the two of us, the question felt like a natural evolution rather than a surprise. The most profound change, however, was within myself. The woman who had spent years apologizing for her existence, making herself small to accommodate others' expectations, had discovered her voice and her worth. I had stood my ground when it mattered most, choosing my daughter's dignity over financial gain, choosing truth over comfortable lies. And in doing so, I had finally become the mother and the person I had always hoped to be. 6 months turned into a year, and our lives continued to transform in ways I never could have imagined before that fateful wedding day. Our new apartment became a true home, walls adorned with Lily's increasingly sophisticated artwork and shelves filled with books we could now afford to buy rather than borrow. The haunted look that had briefly shadowed my daughter's eyes after Brittany's assault faded, replaced by the confident gaze of a child who knows she is loved unconditionally and valued for exactly who she is. My position at the Hamilton Foundation evolved as I introduced new initiatives focused on supporting single-parent families through educational empowerment. The Second Chance Scholarships program I developed, providing educational grants to parents who had interrupted their schooling to raise children, received recognition from the Mayor's Office and State Education Board. Each success felt like redemption, transforming the pain of our past into purpose. Despite everything, thoughts of Brittany occasionally surfaced, usually triggered by family birthdays or holidays. The sister I had grown up with, who had once helped me with science projects and secretly shared her dessert when our parents sent me to bed without dinner for breaking a vase, seemed impossible to reconcile with the woman who had dragged Lily across a church floor. "Do you ever wonder how Aunt Brittany is doing?" Lily asked one evening as we prepared dinner together, her question catching me off guard. I considered my answer carefully. "Sometimes," I admitted. "It's complicated when someone is family but has hurt you deeply." Lily nodded, methodically slicing cucumbers for our salad. In counseling, Ms. Rebecca says forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let someone hurt you again. It just means you're not carrying the anger anymore. Ms. Rebecca was the child psychologist Eleanor had recommended, whose gentle guidance had helped Lily process the wedding incident and its aftermath. Once again, my daughter's emotional intelligence amazed me. "That's very wise," I told her. "Are you thinking about forgiving Aunt Brittany?" She shrugged, her expression thoughtful beyond her 11 years. "Maybe someday, but not yet." "That's okay too," I assured her. "Healing happens on its own timeline." 2 weeks later, I received a letter with an unfamiliar postmark. Inside was a check for $15,000 and a brief note in Brittany's unmistakable handwriting. "I know this doesn't fix anything. Community service at a children's shelter has been educational. Do what you want with the money. B." No apology, no real acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused, yet the gesture itself suggested some level of reflection, however minimal. After considering my options, I endorsed the check to the children's shelter where Brittany was serving her community service hours, with a note requesting it be used for their educational programs. It felt like closing a chapter, setting down a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying. When Derek suggested we visit the prison where Brittany was serving weekends as part of her plea deal, I initially refused. But after reflection and a conversation with my therapist, another positive change in my life since the wedding, I reconsidered. Perhaps seeing Brittany in person would provide the closure I needed to fully move forward. The visiting room was stark and institutional, a harsh contrast to the luxury Brittany had surrounded herself with for so many years. When she entered, I barely recognized my sister. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a standard-issue uniform and a face stripped of artifice. She looked older, smaller somehow, though her posture still carried echoes of her former confidence. "I didn't think you'd come," she said as she sat across from me, a table between us like the gulf of understanding that had always existed in our relationship. "I wasn't sure I would either," I replied honestly. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken accusations and defenses. "I saw what you did with the money," she finally said. The shelter director made a big announcement about the generous anonymous donation at last week's session. It seemed appropriate. Brittany's lips tightened. "Always the saint, aren't you, Autumn? Making sure everyone knows how much better you're than me." The familiar pattern of attack threatened to pull me back into our old dynamic, but I refused to engage. "I didn't come here to fight, Brittany. I came because we're sisters, and despite everything, I wanted to see if you're okay." "If I'm okay?" She laughed bitterly. "I've lost my career, my reputation, my fiancé, my freedom on weekends. My life is in ruins, and you're asking if I'm okay." "Yes," I said simply. "Because that's what family does. Or what it should do." Something flickered in her eyes, regret, perhaps, or recognition of what she had thrown away. But her walls remained firmly in place. "Well, I'm surviving," she said stiffly. "The white-collar criminals get better treatment than the others." Ironic, considering we've usually stolen more. At least she was acknowledging her crimes, however obliquely. It was a start. "And Lily?" she asked, surprising me. "How is she?" "She's healing," I answered cautiously. "She has a good therapist. She's doing well in school." Brittany nodded, her gaze dropping to the table. "I see her sometimes in my mind, the way she looked that day. Her face when I—" She didn't finish the sentence, but her fingers traced patterns on the table's surface, a nervous habit from childhood. "I don't know why I did that. I've never been violent before." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest Brittany had come to taking responsibility for her actions. "Fear makes us do terrible things sometimes," I offered. "Fear of not being perfect, of losing control, of being exposed." She looked up sharply. "I'm not afraid of anything." "Everyone is afraid of something, Brittany. Even you." The remainder of our visit passed in stilted conversation about safer topics, our parents' health, mutual childhood acquaintances, the unusually warm fall weather. When the guard announced visiting hours were ending, I stood to leave, uncertain if this encounter had accomplished anything meaningful. "Will you come again?" Brittany asked, vulnerability briefly visible beneath her composed expression. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "But I can write if you'd like." She nodded once, a quick dip of her chin that could have been easily missed. As I turned to leave, she called after me, "Autumn? Tell Lily, tell her I'm sorry. And that it wasn't her fault. None of it was her fault." The words were inadequate considering the harm done, but they were a beginning, a small crack in the wall of denial Brittany had built around herself. Whether it would widen into true understanding and remorse remained to be seen. My parents gradually came to terms with the new reality as well. After months of defending Brittany and minimizing her actions, they finally watched the cell phone video that had captured the wedding incident. Seeing their granddaughter dragged across a church floor broke through their denial in ways my words never could. "We failed you both," my father admitted during a difficult but necessary conversation. "We favored Brittany because she was easier to understand, easier to be proud of in the ways we valued. We never saw what that did to either of you." "It's not too late to change," I told them, offering the grace I was learning to extend to myself as well. "Lily needs grandparents who value her for who she is, not what she achieves." Their relationship with their granddaughter improved as they learned to appreciate her artistic talents, her compassion, her unique way of seeing the world, all the qualities they had overlooked in me. Our Sunday dinners became less stressful, more genuine, as old patterns of interaction gradually gave way to healthier ones. Derek's role in our lives evolved as well. What began as friendly dinners progressed to movie outings, museum visits, and eventually, the tentative beginning of something deeper. Unlike the whirlwind romance he'd had with Brittany, our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine connection rather than appearances or social advantage. "Lily asked if you're my boyfriend," I told him one evening as we walked along the riverfront after dinner, the city lights reflecting on the water. "What did you tell her?" he asked, his hand warm around mine in the cool autumn air. "I said I wasn't sure what to call it yet, but that you make me happy." He stopped walking, turning to face me with an earnestness that had become familiar. "You make me happy too, Autumn. Both of you do. I've never known anyone like you, someone so genuine, so uncompromising in your values. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. I was engaged to your sister for 2 years and never knew the real her. I've known you for 1 year and feel like I've always known you. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Brittany, who had cultivated the perfect image, had ultimately been exposed as fraudulent. I, who had always been dismissed as inadequate, was being valued for exactly who I was. We have time, I told him, leaning into his embrace. No need to rush or define everything. Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. The foundation work expanded, creating opportunities for children and families across the city. Lily entered middle school with confidence, her academic and artistic talents flourishing in an environment that celebrated diverse forms of intelligence. My relationship with Derek deepened, enriching our lives without defining them. And through it all, I carried the lesson of that wedding day, that sometimes the most difficult choices lead to the greatest freedom, that standing firm in your values may cost you in the moment, but rewards you immeasurably in the end. The $15,000 I refused became irrelevant compared to what I gained: self-respect, authentic relationships, the knowledge that I had shown my daughter what true integrity looks like in action. On Lily's 12th birthday, as friends and family gathered in our home to celebrate, I watched my daughter blow out her candles, surrounded by people who truly saw and valued her. The contrast with the previous year, when Brittany had deemed her unworthy of being seen, couldn't have been starker. "What did you wish for?" Derek asked her as applause filled the room. Lily grinned, the gap in her front teeth long since filled, but her smile no less radiant for being perfect now. "Can't tell, or it won't come true. But I didn't wish for anything I don't already have." Looking around at the life we had built from the ashes of that disastrous wedding day, I knew exactly what she meant. We had found our way to something precious: authenticity, dignity, and the courage to demand both, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Some people spend their entire lives seeking validation from those who will never truly see them. The day I refused to accept money for my daughter's exclusion, I stopped being one of those people. I chose her worth and, by extension, my own over any amount of financial gain or family peace. It was the best decision I ever made. I hope this story reminds you that you're worth standing up for, too. That choosing dignity over dollars, integrity over convenience, and truth over comfortable lies is always the right path, even when it's the hardest one. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that ultimately led to something better? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this revenge story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing their ground was the right thing to do. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it.